Hundreds of Ousmane Sonko's supporters gathered on the side of the Palace of Justice in Dakar on Monday. They were demanding his release as he appeared before the judge after he was accused of rape. The protesters say President Macky Sall's government plotted against Sonko in order to neutralize the opposition 2 years before the presidential election. The army was positioned in various parts of the capital in anticipation of further unrest. Sonko's lawyer says the charges against him are politically motivated.
Il s'agit en fait du respect de la volonté populaire.
It is about respecting the popular will. The liberation of Ousmane Sonko was a demand of the people of Senegal. They had to do it. It does not matter if they called it a lowering of the tension or de-escalation. What is important is that the measure that was taken demonstrates 2 or 3 things. First, this measure demonstrates that there was a plot erected with sordid procedures which were not worthy of a democratic state. The second is that the state understood that the law conquers all, and the law is nothing other than the expression of the will of the people. This will of the people has pushed back the state. And now, it is not just about liberating Ousmane Sonko. It is about liberating all the political detainees.
La loi et la loi, ce n'est autre chose que l'expression de la volonté populaire.
The Senegalese opposition leader was arrested last week when he was driving in a convoy to appear before a judge for the first time when his supporters clashed with police. He denies the rape allegation and says it's an attempt by President Sall to kneecap a political rival, a claim the government has since denied. Sonko's supporters have called for 3 days of nationwide protests this week.
Well, for more on this story, we're now joined by news correspondent in Abidjan in Côte d'Ivoire, Leanne de Bassompierre. Leanne, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Always good to talk to you. Senegal, normally the quieter of the states in West Africa, but for some reason things are kicking off. What's behind the unrest?
Well, as you rightly said, Senegal has enjoyed about 10 years now of relative calm. So these protests that have quickly, very, very quickly come out of control. But it seems that, of course, the recent protests were triggered by the arrest of Ousmane Sonko. But what we're seeing more and more that over the last few days, French targets have been, or French businesses have been targeted rather. And what we're seeing behind that is the growing grievances that especially young Senegalese have with the President Macky Sall's relationship with the former colonial power France. So several supermarkets that are French-owned have been targeted, as well as Total, which is the French petrol station. And so they've been targeted. Others have been on the lookout. Others have been keeping watchful eyes that their businesses are not targeted as well. It's escalated very quickly to what the Interior Minister actually called organized insurrection when he spoke on Friday night. Now, we know that this evening, President Macky Sall is expected to address the nation in the next few minutes, in fact. He's hoping that speech would, everyone's hoping rather that speech would try to ease some of the tensions that we've seen in recent days.
With Sonko now out of custody, might that deflate tensions, or will they still protest? What's the feeling?
From where I'm standing, I think that it would give him more impetus, in fact, to organize and be involved in these protests, because he's still facing the charges. The charges have not been dropped against him. He's been released on bail, or one of the charges of disturbing public order. Those charges have been dropped against him, as well as several other members of his team as well. But he's still facing the rape charges, and they will be investigating, and there will be a trial that comes after that. But as you rightly know, they are saying that these charges are politically motivated, that as they head to the next presidential elections in 2024, this is the start of this campaign to kind of sully his name before those elections. As you know, that in 2019, he was the third runner-up. He's young, dynamic, 46 years old, and seen to be a very strong contender for the presidency in 2024. However, President Macky Sall is not eligible for a third term. His term comes to an end in 2024. He, however, has not completely ruled out a third term, even though the Constitution doesn't allow for that.
We're seeing cars being torched. I mean, if it escalates, could it be a situation where people get injured and sadly loss of life?
And that's what we've been seeing. Amnesty International confirming today that 8 people have lost their lives. And in fact, just a short while ago, Ousmane Sonko actually addressed his supporters. A copy of that speech was tweeted on his official Twitter account. He's saying that the death toll, in fact, according to them, are 10, or is 10 rather. And so he's now his plan next is to go to the International Criminal Court and lay charges against President Macky Sall at the Hague-based court.
So for the president, it's to restore law and order. But for Ousmane Sonko, what's his end game here?
Well, his end game is to try to gather more support as he slowly starts making his next attempt for the presidency in 2024. As I just said, he is now planning to take President Macky Sall to the International Criminal Court. He's saying that his supporters are not asking for Macky Sall's head right now. They want to respect, and they do respect, the democratic processes, and that instead they will see him in 2024, or see his party in 2024. So unlike the situation that we saw in Mali in August last year, this is very different. They are saying that at least that they are respecting the democratic institutions, and that change will come at the next polls.
And I would imagine the regional body ECOWAS calling for calm, but too early to do anything, actually.
Yeah, so the statement that they released on Saturday was quite mild, just condemning the acts of violence, saying that they're keeping a watchful eye on the situation. But there's no word yet of whether they're going to be sending any mediators or any other kind of help or assistance to the country just yet. But they are monitoring the situation very closely.
What do we know about the case itself at this stage, or is it still waiting to be fully ventilated in court? What is known?
So what is known so far, that it was a beauty salon employee that brought these charges against him. But at the time, he was protected by his parliamentary immunity, being a member of parliament. Then that process took about 10 days, where other members of parliament brought a motion against him to have that parliamentary immunity lifted. Once that parliamentary immunity was lifted about a week and a half ago, that then paved the way for the charges to be brought against him, and his first court appearance last Wednesday, when he was then charged with a further charge of disturbing public order, where people came to the court, and that's when the violence ensued. So not very much else is known about those specific allegations just yet, just that the fact that it was a beauty salon employee that brought those charges against him.
All right, and I suppose being young, and of course the continent is young, we've seen it in other parts of the continent where young leaders are followed quite a bit by young people who generally are the most unemployed and the most vulnerable. So could this be contributing to his popularity?
Definitely contributing to his popularity. Even the education minister this week, or yesterday at least, releasing a statement saying schools are closed until the 15th, because it's very young people that are also finding some kind of resonance in what he's saying as well. So those will be his supporters of the future. Of course, Senegal has been very badly hit, like elsewhere in the world, by the economic crisis that stemmed from the COVID-19 pandemic. So young people are feeling frustrated. Yes, it started with Sonko and his arrest, but then it's very quickly transformed into their frustrations that they have with Macky Sall's relationship with France, the economic opportunities that he's only given to a few, and the big contracts that he's also given to or allegedly only given to those close to him and close to his entourage. So a lot of that frustration coming out on the streets right now, and it's going to be very interesting to watch, to keep watching in the next few days.
Has Sall indicated who he might want to take over?
It's still very early days,
Yeah.
not quite yet. As I said, he hasn't ruled out the possibility of a third term, as we've seen here in Ivory Coast and in Guinea. But he's not too old. He's 59, has been seen as quite dynamic, has been seen to be the head of a country that has been very stable. It's been a beacon of stability, in fact, for West Africa. And so it's still very early days to see who would be his successor.
All right, we've run out of time, but so you reckon that they'll be out on the streets again tomorrow?
Well, they had called for these nationwide protests for 3 days. They are going ahead with them at least until Wednesday. And it doesn't seem like there will be any end to this, or at least for the moment.
Leanne de Bassompierre, merci beaucoup. Always good talking to you. All right, that's a news correspondent in Abidjan watching the story for us in neighbouring Senegal. Opposition leader there who's been released on bail facing charges of rape, and that's caused a lot of disruption in the country, the citizens on the streets.